Hello and welcome to the Biotech 2050 podcast. Biotech 2050 is a think tank chronicling the disruptions changing the biotech industry over the next several decades. Check out our website at biotech2050.com. My name is Alok Tayi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vibe Bio. We're an AI platform that helps support pharmaceutical companies with their strategic decisions. I'm really excited here today to be in San Francisco at JPM 2026, interviewing Cary Claiborne, the CEO of Adial Pharmaceuticals. We'll be having a really interesting discussion today about alcohol abuse disorder, neuropsych, some of their exciting drug development programs, and what the future holds for the industry. So with that, Cary, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, maybe to kick it off, would love it if you can give us a couple quick words on yourself, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. It's interesting because Adial is a relatively small biopharm company, but I started my career with big companies. I started with GE right out of school, spent 15 years there, and mainly in the finance organization. After GE, I spent time at Home Depot and MCI, and then about halfway through my career, I really started thinking about what kind of mark was I making. I was helping big companies do really well and make a lot of money, but if you thought back on what impact would you really leave? I didn't really feel that way. So I actually got into life sciences about 20 years ago, 22 years now, with a really small stem cell company called Osiris Therapeutics. They were looking for a CFO that could take them public. I took them public, and the work we were doing there, we were working on a drug that had no treatment. Graft versus host disease. People were dying from this disease. And I look back and said, wow, we were saving babies. And I said, that is so much more important than how many cans of paint Home Depot sold. And I never looked back after that. I said, life sciences, for me, what an impact you can make. After that, I spent some time at Alok Pharmaceuticals as their CFO. And then I joined a company called Indivior as their CFO, and they were the leader in addiction, and that's what first brought me into the addiction area. And I lost a close family member to addiction, so addiction was near and dear to my heart as I learned about, wow, there are medical treatments out there that can actually help someone with that. And that's what ultimately brought me to Adial, first as a board member, and Adial is focused on alcohol use disorder, and I ultimately took over as CEO about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, well, I think it's, alcohol abuse disorder, substance abuse disorder, obviously massive unmet need, and one where I feel like many people assume it's a one of choice, when in reality it probably isn't.
No.
Would love to kind of hear from your perspective, what does the standard of care look like, right? I think many are familiar with the indication, but not the treatment landscape or the lack thereof.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there's estimates that say there's 30 million people potentially suffering from alcohol use disorder just in the US, and much bigger worldwide. But less than 5% actually seek any kind of treatment. And of that 5%, half don't even seek the medical treatment. And one of the reasons are the medical treatments that are on the market, and there haven't been any new ones in over 20 years. They're pretty radical treatments. And they all require abstinence before a patient can go on that. And abstinence is a major lifestyle change for people. So it's not very desirable. It works for people, some people, but very few can maintain that over the long term. So the drugs that are out there all have pretty high side effects. Which, as you know, if there are really bad side effects and you can't tolerate a drug, you don't take the drug. Therefore, you don't get the treatment. Another one that's a standard of care is a drug called Antabuse, which is designed to be a real deterrent. So if someone gets on that drug, first they had to go through withdrawal and stop drinking, be abstinent, and then if they're on that drug and they get any alcohol in their system, they get violently ill. So it teaches you a lesson. But if you think about that, who wants to be on a drug like that? Who's going to voluntarily stay on a drug like that? So there really aren't any good treatments, and we think we bring a really new, unique approach to treating alcohol use disorder.
Yeah, from our prior conversation, it sounded like there's some really interesting scientific insights that underpin the formation of Adial. I'd love to just learn a little bit about kind of what catalyzed the formation of the company and kind of how you're approaching this in a unique and different way.
Yeah, so it really is a precision treatment approach to treating alcohol use disorder. So it is based, the drug is a repurposed drug, ondansetron, which has been on the market at much higher doses since 1991 under the brand name of Zofran to treat nausea and vomiting. It's a serotonin 3 blocker, so it works in the brain. It impacts the dopamine reward system. So someone taking this drug for alcohol use disorder, they see a reduction in cravings. It takes away the cravings, it takes away the impulse to drink. And if someone does drink, they don't get that pleasure that they typically would get from drinking alcohol. But what's unique about it is a genetically targeted drug. So it doesn't work for everyone. But what we saw is that for people that have certain genetic biomarkers, that makes them more sensitive or more reactive to low dosing ondansetron. And therefore it tends to work with them. And our approach is not to require someone to stop drinking. It's designed to be a moderation in heavy drinking. So you don't have to stop drinking, which is a big hurdle that people don't have to get over. They get on the drug if they test positive, and it lowers their desire. And what we see is a reduction in heavy drinking as a result of that.
Yeah, wow. Now, when you think about kind of the prospective access to such a therapeutic, does it require then a companion diagnostic? Does it require a genetic test to be able to kind of get the prescription? Like, how do you think about that?
So that will be a companion diagnostic, and we just recently announced not that long ago that we moved from a blood test to a cheek swab. So very simple, patient-friendly test that the physician would first, have the patient take, and if they test positive for this biomarker, then they're a candidate for the drug. And the physicians actually have said in our research that that's going to open the door to more people even considering treatment, because a lot of times when they bring up someone's drinking levels in their physical, they get a real big pushback from the patient. Like, wait a minute, that's not me. I don't have a problem. Why are we even talking about it? And they say, with your approach, they would then say, but you know what? There's a test we can give you, and it may help us understand, why you struggle with drinking. And actually, there's a drug that can help you lower your drinking. And guess what? They feel like that takes it away from a behavioral or a moral failing within the patient to really there's something going on scientifically, biologically, even maybe in my family history, that opens the door to say, yeah, I would like to learn more about that. And then if they test positive, then they can get on the drug. It's got a very low side effect profile. So they can tolerate it, and that's what we've seen in our studies, that the side effects are actually pretty comparable to placebo, which you don't really see that often. But that means they'll stay on the drug, hopefully, and lower their drinking level.
Yeah, amazing. Now, I'm kind of curious, like when you think about the percentage of the prospective 30 million that have AUD that could benefit from your therapeutic, can you give us a sense of what portion might be impacted by that? Yeah,
so the targeted genotype we're going after is about 14%. So, but that's up a really big number. So we still think, that if we can help anybody, it's a home run for us, and it's a home run for the industry, because it's such a large unmet need.
Totally. Now, how do you think about something like pricing in this case? Because at least when you think about AUD and SUD, there's, as analogies, there's both obviously the medical impact, but there's also a broader societal one that isn't necessarily factored into the healthcare cost of the individual.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's estimated that alcohol use disorder costs the U.S. economy about $250 billion a year. And that's through all kinds of issues like health issues that are caused by it, but just lost productivity, domestic abuse. Someone gets drunk and they get behind the wheel of a car and they impact not just themselves, but other families. So it's a huge cost, a huge public health need, and we don't think there, or at least our research shown there shouldn't be any issues getting good reimbursement for a drug like that.
Indeed. Now, tell us a little bit about kind of the pipeline. What are you excited about for the future, and how you're thinking about growth for Adial?
Yeah, so what we're really excited about for the future is getting this drug through phase 3. That's we're laser focused on that, because we think that's where we can make the biggest impact. But because ADO4 does work in the brain, ultimately there's the potential to treat any kind of addiction that is impulse driven or cravings driven, and that's unfortunately most addictions are driven by that. So the pipeline down the road could be looking at other things like opiate use disorder, even impulse eating, gambling, things like that. But right now we are laser focused on alcohol use disorder.
Yeah, and when you think about sort of the adjacencies with the program, or one could think about like a pipeline and a pill potential. One could also think about other adjacent indications that manifest with the biology.
Yeah.
Any particular preferences or kind of opinions in that regard?
Well, so right now it's a daily dose. But ultimately, maybe you could be a long-acting form where it's delivered through a different mechanism where they don't have to take it every day. That we see that in addiction. Opiate use disorder has moved that way where they now have monthly doses. And there was a 6-month dose, because anytime someone has to think about taking it every day, it's easier to relapse that way. So at least with this drug, because the side effect is so low, there are no real reasons why they wouldn't take it.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, one thing we're asking all of our guests here at JPM 2026 is sort of some rapid fire questions. The first one I've got for you is on AI.
Okay. Well, interestingly enough, we actually use some AI as we're preparing for this phase 3. We engage with a company that really uses machine learning to run through multiple simulations on the data we already had to help us design the best outcome in the next phase 3 study. That had never been done before, but it gives us a great deal of confidence that it reaffirmed objectively what we were already assuming. Like, this is this genotype that's 14%, that's the one we should go after. By using more AI-based models, it confirmed that objectively. So, that gave us even greater confidence that we're moving in the right direction.
Amazing. And just in terms of like impact to the organization and the program, can you give us a sense of what that partnership and use case enabled or manifested for you?
It just, like I said, it really just, where there may have been any concerns or doubts that we're moving in the right direction, it really just reaffirmed it. It took a while to get there, running all those different simulations and understanding what they're saying, what's coming out of it, but it really engaged our organization even more to say, yeah, we're on the right track here, this makes sense. We feel more confident going into a large study like that.
Very cool. Next one, China.
China. Big market opportunity. I get a lot of inquiries on potentially doing something with our drug in China. Right now, again, being laser focused on the U.S. market, that's our focus now. But potentially, a market like China could be an opportunity for the right company to partner with.
And how do you think about prospective assets being developed there and potentially competition in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, you always, there's always that risk of some competition coming out of China if you don't have the right partner, and we have patents, so we will try our best to enforce those if that happens. But that's just something you have to prepare for. And I think based on other companies I've been with that have business in China, having the right partner can help you in that regard. You just have to go in with your eyes fully open and understand what the risks are there.
Indeed. Last one is on rare disease.
Well, rare disease, big market opportunity, a lot of companies pursuing rare disease. In some ways, even though there's such a big population estimated to have alcohol use disorder, because there are so few people actually getting treated and seeking treatment, in some cases, it's a little bit like a rare disease. We think about it a lot like that. And there's other segments within AUD, like adolescent. You don't think about underage drinking, but it is a growing problem within that, say, 12 to 17-year-old range. There are a number of people that are suffering from alcohol use disorder. And it's really a different disease at that level because adolescents' brains are still developing, and it's much more harmful long-term for someone that drinks at a heavy level at that age. So it's potentially a rare disease opportunity.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's interesting, when I spend time with whether it's the folks at Novo around cardiometabolic issues, and obesity or cardiovascular issues at other places, one of the things I often think about is many of these larger indications we think about are composed of smaller ones, right? And so it sounds like even in the case of AUD, that same mental model.
Absolutely. We're looking at it that way.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, with that, really excited to see the progress with the program and are very hopeful both for Adial and the patient population here, and certainly would love to have you on again to talk through that.
Yeah, great. I appreciate you having me on and love talking about it, and would love to keep you updated on our progress.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you so much.